All right, welcome back. The U.S. could be on the verge of a debt disaster. Don't take our word for it. Even the White House's budget director says the future isn't looking good.
Here to explain is Rick Berman. He's the executive director of Defeat the Debt, a project of the Employment Policies Institute. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Allison.
All right, so as we all know, the United States has, at the moment, an unblemished AAA credit rating. Is that somehow about to change?
Well, it certainly looks like it. The last debt offerings by the government came in at higher interest rates than some corporate debt. Warren Buffett can now borrow money at a lesser rate than the United States government because we are running up these huge deficits that, unfortunately, most people don't fully appreciate. And if I don't get anything done in this interview, I want your viewers to understand one thing. When they hear about trillions of dollars, and we're now adding about $1.5 trillion to the debt every year, think of it this way. 1 million seconds takes about 12 days to elapse. 1 trillion seconds takes over 31,000 years. So when you start to understand how big 1 trillion is versus a billion or a million, you start to think about real money. And when we're adding $1.5 trillion in deficit every year for the next 10 years, and this is the Obama administration's projections, you're talking about huge interest payments, which right now are running in excess of $500 million a day.
Okay, now if there's one thing I really want to accomplish in this interview, it's exactly what you just said at the end there, which is this interest payments. And I think most Americans don't appreciate or even understand that. I didn't until yesterday, this Moody's rating. Right now we have a AAA rating, according to Moody's.
Right.
Now, if that should change, which there is some buzz that that may happen and drop to a AA rating, those interest payments could go up and bankrupt our country even more?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. We're presently borrowing money at about 3.3% interest in the last year. You add 1% interest on what is now approximately a $12.7 trillion debt, and you're talking about real money. You're talking about unsustainable borrowing because we can't pay for it. We're either going to have to cut spending, or we're going to have to raise taxes dramatically, or we're going to have to inflate the money supply, which no one really wants to do. We don't want to become Zimbabwe. And if you remember, last year Zimbabwe had to do away with their money because they were running inflation rates of over 11 million%. Prices were doubling every 30 hours in Zimbabwe because of inflation. So you're either going to cut spending dramatically, which politically the system doesn't seem to want to accommodate, or you have to raise taxes. And quite frankly, it's very difficult to raise taxes because it's politically unpopular, and the top 1% of all the income taxpayers in the country are already carrying most of the income tax burden. And so where do you go for more taxes? You go to the middle class, and that's politically unpopular.
So given that those two options are unpopular, if the interest rate rises, what's going to happen?
Well, then we have to obviously pay more to borrow. That means that we're going to have less money to expand businesses. Everybody's interest rates go up. Interest rates on home mortgages, car loans, business borrowing, all of this will go up, and the economy will slow down. You can literally put the country into a depression, and most people cannot predict where that tipping point is. You know, the tipping point on all of these things are only known in hindsight. I've talked to a lot of smart people about this, and no one knows what the exit strategy is. No one can predict how this ends.
Well, Rick, we appreciate you joining us on this Easter Sunday. We'll have to keep our eye on this story. Thanks so much for joining us. Happy Easter to you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.